Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a person who is inquiring about a job and an employee of a company. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello, Freshopolis Supermarket. How can I help?
Oh, hello. I'm just calling about the job I saw advertised on your website.
Oh, yes, we still have positions available.
That's great. I'd like to ask about what's involved exactly. The website didn't have many details.
No, we use the same general advert for all the jobs here at Freshopolis. So what would you like to know?
Well, what exactly would I be doing? Would I be a cashier?
No, I'm afraid all our cashier positions are taken at the moment. You would be stacking shelves.
Oh, that's fine.
Of course, if a position on the checkouts opens up in the future, you could apply to transfer there, but at first, you'd be on the shop floor.
Okay. And would I be helping with deliveries too?
No, we have a special team for that. There are a lot of health and safety rules.
Right. And this is a part-time position, yeah?
Yes, most of the workers here are students, so most of our positions are part-time. You would start with 12 hours a week.
That sounds fine. Would that be 1 day a week then?
No, you'd do it across 4 days.
Oh, okay. So each shift would be 3 hours. Is that right?
That's right. And the days you work change each week. So some weeks you'll do weekday evenings, other weeks you'll do Saturday mornings, for example.
I have university on Monday and Tuesday mornings. Would that be a problem?
Nope, not at all. The job can fit around your studies. Just tell your manager if there are any shifts you can't do. Like I said, most of our workers are students, so we understand your studies come first.
Fantastic. And which branch would I be working in? The town centre one?
No, we have no vacancies there. We're looking for staff for the branch on Geranium Road.
I'm not sure I know that street. How do you spell it?
Geranium Road.
Got it. Wait, is that the road with Worldview Cinema on it?
Yes, that's right. In fact, the branch is just opposite the cinema.
Oh, I do know it then. It's actually quite close to me. Could I ask about the wages?
Of course, your starting rate will be £10.30 an hour.
That's pretty good. I know Cost Drop supermarkets only pay £8.80 per hour.
Yes, we try to offer a competitive rate to attract the best workers. We also increase your rate if you're working on a Sunday or a public holiday. It goes up to £11.95.
That's great. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you will have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
We like to think so. We also offer a few other benefits for all our staff members too. For example, with your staff discount, you'll get 20% off anything you buy from our store.
That's good.
And if you ever work a double shift, you'll be given a free meal, either lunch or dinner, depending on the time of your shift.
Wonderful. Do I just choose free food from the supermarket shelves?
No, it'll be in our staff canteen, so it'll be freshly cooked. And hot.
That all sounds really good.
Yes, our cook is really talented. The food is delicious. We also help with your travel costs. If you take the bus to work, we have a bus voucher scheme. You can use these vouchers to get lower prices to and from work.
I usually get around the city by bike.
In that case, you'd benefit from our work cycle scheme. You can get money off in lots of different bike shops in the city.
That would be really useful if I needed new tires or something.
Yes, it's a great little scheme. Well, you sound pretty interested. Would you be able to come in for an interview?
Sure. When would it be?
We're holding interviews next Tuesday to Thursday. That's the 13th to the 15th of February. Are you available on any of those days?
Tuesday would be the best for me. I'm visiting my family for a couple of days from Wednesday.
That's great. Could you come in the morning, say 11 a.m.?
Could we make it after 1 p.m.? I have university in the morning.
Sure, no problem. Is 2:30 okay?
Perfect.
I just need to take your name.
Of course. It's Jesse Flynn.
Okay, Jesse. We'll see you then. Make sure you bring a hard copy of your CV when you come to the interview. As we're seeing so many candidates, we're asking you not to email it in advance because it can go astray.
No problem. And where will the interview be? At the branch, or...
Yes, sorry, good point. All the interviews take place at our head office, which is next to the town center branch. It's the next building. You can't miss it. There's a sign outside that says Freshopolis Office.
That sounds easy enough.
And when you come, give your name at reception and say you have an interview with Alex White.
Alex White. Got it.
Yes, that's Whyte, by the way, not I.
Sure, great.
Well, thanks very much, Jesse, and we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it. That is the end of part 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a podcast on behalf of a company called Event Stars, which arranges staffing for music festivals. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hi, I'm Jody, manager of Event Stars, specializing in arranging temporary jobs at music festivals. Let me tell you a bit about myself. Before I founded Event Stars, I did various temporary jobs at festivals myself, and you won't be surprised to hear that I absolutely loved it. Provided I was able to earn enough to cover the cost of my ticket, I was happy. And that wasn't too hard. When I went to my very first festival, I remember feeling apprehensive about not knowing anyone. But I needn't have worried because I found myself surrounded by like-minded people. We immediately made a connection, which amazed me at the time. And I'm still mates today with lots of my festival companions from those early days, some of whom work alongside me in Event Stars. I started when I was 18, and while there were lots of other workers of a similar age to me, what I hadn't expected was that some of the other festival staff would be 4 times my age, but still as passionate as ever about the whole festival experience. So anyway, I set up Event Stars with the aim of finding temporary staff to work during festivals. We always need people, regardless of whether you're an experienced festival worker or a first-timer. There's always a desperate need for qualified medics, so do please apply if that's you. Basically, for all our staff, the work you do gets you into the festival site. Work for ticket, we call it. But I should say, please don't just treat it as an easy way to get in for free to watch your favorite bands. because there will be work to do, and time off on festival days is limited. Oh, and we're also on the lookout for people who are happy to be on the night shift, working into the early hours. If you're interested, you can apply via our website. Now, as for advice for someone who's considering working at festivals, I'd say make sure you genuinely want to do the work before you apply. And if you think it's not for you, then don't. A lot of people apply with a friend, which is understandable, but bear in mind that you might find yourselves working on different sites, especially at bigger festivals, so you may end up hardly seeing each other. And also, make sure you always do your research and find out in detail what the work entails and what's expected of you. It doesn't follow that just because you had a fantastic time at a particular festival as a ticket holder, you'd therefore enjoy it just as much if you were working.
Before you hear the rest of the podcast, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 17 to 20.
The good news is we still have openings at various festivals, which I'd like to tell you about. Starting with Klezmerfest, we need people for our meet and greet team to welcome new arrivals to the festival and direct them to whichever of the camping zones they've got a ticket for and will be based in throughout the festival. And then, at Big Time, we still have vacancies for the site clear-up during the 3 days once the festival is over, with generous hourly rates of pay, as well as discarded tickets and food containers. Even things like tents get left behind, and it all needs to be disposed of. There's been a lot of interest in the brand new Blestival this year, as well as featuring comedy, celebrity chefs, and some great bands. One of Blestival's key aims is to raise funds for much-needed wildlife conservation projects in developing countries. And for this, we need staff to take donations from the festival goers. And the busiest times for this are when people are arriving at the start and leaving the site on the final day. And finally, we have a few openings at Smash, the celebration of rock music. The organizers have decided that there are now going to be at-the-gate ticket sales. And so we're looking for people for that, preferably with experience of handling contactless payments. Do please view our website and just follow the links if you'd like to apply. We're offering excellent working conditions, and believe me, the work is great fun.
That is the end of part 2. You now have some time to check your answers.
Now turn to part 3. Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between a student called Mary and her tutor, Mr. Hadstone. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mr. Headstone. Is this the right time for our meeting?
Yes, it is. Thanks for coming in at such a late hour, Mary. I know you've had a busy day studying and will be keen to get home. And thanks for volunteering to run this project. It's going to help you develop and practice skills needed by teachers today. Field trips are getting more and more a part of school life. So as a student of education, it'll be wonderful training for you. It's really a great opportunity.
We did loads of field trips at school, so I've got a good idea of what sort of things we could do.
I expect so. But we're here to go through the basics of planning one, and the trip leader carries a load of responsibility. Right now, you're focusing on activities, but your main job is to consider the dangers and come up with ways of countering or avoiding them. There are lots of government regulations you won't have been aware of on your school trips, but they're just a guideline for your own planning. Some of those school trips you went on would have been pretty adventurous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and your plan needs to be tailored to the kind of trip you're doing. On a well-planned and successfully led adventure trip, we don't often hear of problems, even though sometimes there's bad weather, for example, that a school party has managed to combat. That's because the leader created a well-thought-out hazard management plan.
Ah, I thought I'd just be taking my mates out on a trek. Now it's all paperwork.
Yes, well, that's why I called you in. We'll work on this together over the next few days. I just wanted to give you a heads up on what you'll need to think about. There are some aspects that every trip needs to consider. What do you think they might be?
Well, heavy rain or high winds, I guess, and any dangers in the terrain?
Yes, we call those the significant factors. And another important one is the makeup of your group. But you don't need to go overboard. There are some kinds of hazard that you won't need to think about at all. Things like hurricanes, earthquakes, radioactivity, or major diseases such as cancer. The official name for those is unlikely events, because they almost certainly won't happen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so let's consider the hazards seen as most likely on a field trip into the countryside. Weather causes real problems. Overexposure to the sun or the cold, even the wind, can have a big impact. And of course, the weather can change very suddenly and without warning.
Yes, people can get into trouble in the hills if they don't bring extra layers of clothes and a jacket, even if they start walking on a hot day. Oh, and a raincoat too, of course. What's next then?
Well, let's think about possible activities and what you might need.
Yes, okay. Well, for hiking, of course, we need a first aid kit. Oh, and a decent topographic map of the area. And we need to make sure that more than one person can read it. I've run into lots of difficulties in the past with people who can't identify even major features, like rivers. And some people have no idea about contour lines. And I suppose a compass, too.
You'd need to list those. Then there are things that might be obvious but must be written down and considered seriously. For example, if there's a possibility of falling more than 2.5 meters, that's considered life-threatening. And I'm sure you would be aware of problems near the sea, like tides or high waves. And the trouble you can get into where there's a possibility of an avalanche or a mudslide or a flash flood if you're anywhere near rivers.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of an adventurous route for this trip. You know, that's always more fun. And it's such a cool feeling when you've achieved something really difficult.
Yes, okay, but then you need to consider who's going to be in your party. Don't go and plan things that are beyond the reach of most people, or you're asking for trouble. You need to take into account the physical strength and experience of the party as a whole. When you make your groups, Make sure there's at least one person in each one who's been hiking a few times before.
Wow! There's a lot to write down, isn't there? I'm really keen to get started now.
Well, good, because there's a lot more detail to consider. For now, I'll just mention 2 more of the common hazards for high school trips in particular.
Yes?
The Ministry of Education website says don't use inexperienced volunteers. And don't allow student drivers to bring their own cars, or to drive anyone else's car for that matter.
Well, now I really have something to think about. Thanks, Mr. Headstone.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Part 4. Part 4.
You will hear a lecture on climate change. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
This lecture in environmental studies is on the topic of human influence on climate change. First, I'll outline some of the factors affecting climate, then go on to discuss what has already occurred, and finish up by speculating on the effects. Previously, we've covered how factors such as ocean currents and prevailing winds affect climate change naturally. However, the influence of human activity on climate is what I'll talk about today. At first, the effect on the climate was relatively small. Trees were cut down to provide fuel for fires, and, as we know, trees absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, so the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere would have increased, but not noticeably. So, in what ways has human activity really impacted on the climate? A major contributor was the advent of the Industrial Revolution at the end of the 18th century, combined with the invention of the combustion engine. In addition, Earth's burgeoning population has had a marked effect on climate. The first 2 factors saw increased amounts of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal and oil. The final one, human expansion, has resulted in deforestation on such a scale that the extra carbon dioxide in the air cannot be soaked up and converted into oxygen by the remaining trees. Okay, so what has already happened? Well, global temperatures have risen by 0.6 degrees Celsius in the last 130 years. Levels of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide gases have escalated. Carbon dioxide concentrations have climbed by 30%, and methane levels have increased by 145% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Gas, produced by fossil fuel extraction, livestock, and paddy fields, is primarily responsible for the growth of methane levels. Nitrous oxide, or N2O, comes from natural sources, wet tropical forests, for instance. But it is also produced by human-related activities, such as agriculture, which uses synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, rubbish disposal systems, and vehicle emissions. How do gases like carbon dioxide and methane affect the climate? Well, this is what we call the greenhouse effect. Under normal conditions, the sun's rays hit the Earth and some are reflected back into space. However, these gases, CO2 and methane, create a barrier in the atmosphere, which prevents a proportion of the sun's rays from being reflected back into space. And, instead, The gases become trapped in the atmosphere. It's simple, really. Because the sun's rays can't escape, the Earth heats up. What are the possible effects? Firstly, a rise in sea levels. We already know that the Arctic ice cap has melted and shrunk considerably, and great chunks of ice have been lost from Antarctica. In 1998, it was reported that 46 million people lived in areas at risk of flooding, and the number of people at risk will increase significantly if sea levels rise. It is estimated that a rise of only 50 centimeters would put that number at 92 million. Further projections would see a rise of 1 meter put 118 million people in danger of losing their homes and livelihoods, not to mention the loss of prime, fertile farmland. Experts predict a rise of at least 50 centimeters over the next 50 years or so. Secondly, there would be a modification of vegetation zones, with changes in the boundaries between grassland, shrubland, forest, and desert. This is already causing famine in arid areas of northeastern Africa, and has instigated, and will continue to instigate, mass movements of people away from dry regions. What we are seeing now is only the first stage, with temporary camps for climate refugees already at overcapacity. In the future, there will be significant migration resulting in extreme overcrowding of towns and cities. Another potentially disastrous effect of climate change is an increase in the range and distribution of pests, which could bring about an increase in the prevalence of certain diseases. If we think of the malaria-carrying mosquito, for example, which thrives in warmer regions, at the moment, about 45% of the world's population is exposed to malaria. But, with an increase in temperature, there will be many millions more cases of malaria a year. The last effect I'm going to mention today is the change in ecosystems. Global warming will influence species composition for both fauna and flora, such that some animal species will disappear and others will multiply. And it'll be the same for plants and trees. It is predicted that around 2/3 of the world's forests will undergo major changes of some kind. Scientists also expect deserts will become hotter, and, of course, desertification will continue at an increasingly worrying rate, and will become harder, if not impossible, to reverse. What could we do to stop the process? Well, that's the subject of next week's lecture. So I hope to see you all there.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That's the end of the listening test. You will now have 2 minutes to check your answers.